Welcome back to Proud Innovation 2023. We're going to continue this conversation with our next panel, Reaching for Success, with the dynamic duo in the startup entrepreneurship world, co-founders of OME Gear, Stacey Pierce and Jules Weldon. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to have you here. This is my third conversation with Stacey and Jules, and every conversation I have, you learn so much more about everything they've gone through, the work they're doing, and where they have really put their hearts into where they're going with their product. And I am very excited about this conversation today. So first, I'll let you guys start. You can fight it out who wants to start first. But if you can give a self-introduction, who wants to go first?
All right. Thank you, Sean. What an honor, honestly, to be a part of this. And so hopefully the information we share will be helpful to at least one person on the call. My name is Jules Weldon. My pronouns are she and her. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philly, in an entrepreneurial family. My mom had a bakery that now has been in existence for about 55 years. My younger brother's taken it over. But six kids in my family, so I'm right in the middle of six kids, and always did things as a team. So I'm no stranger to a good team, but my quick background, I was involved in a church. Actually, I worked for a church for 10 years and then left that and traveled for a year to 11 developing countries, just serving in whatever way we could. I went with three other women, came back and got involved in business management consulting. So worked for a small firm and then moved to a regional firm. And then our regional firm actually got bought out by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And we were tasked, our little regional firm was tasked within PwC to stand up the business consulting practice or re-stand it up in the Southeast. And so it was a huge honor to be a part of that. And I got to work with some incredible clients, got, lots of greenhouse learning of experience in business and strategy and, all of that. But came to a point where I needed to do something for myself and not continue to work 80 hours a week and good work, but just wasn't the path that I knew was for me. And so that introduction will continue, I think, into the questions that we get into. So I'll stop there and then let Stace take over.
Yeah. My name is Stacey Pierce. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm from Aiken, South Carolina. So you probably detect a little twang in my voice. So I am a South Carolinian. But my background is very diverse. People always ask me, what haven't I done? And I'm like, I don't know. There's still a lot of things I really want to do and have plans to do. But my background is occupational therapy. I was a therapist for many years, but then I got recruited from a CCRC, which is a retirement community. I worked with the aging population for a while and started the business entrepreneurial journey. I started it prior, because as I was a therapist, I also was a part owner in a restaurant where I was the chef and I had a catering business. But I really took a deep dive into building businesses when I got recruited by the CEO to build a home care company. This was at the recession. No one was moving into the community. So we had to take our services out into the community. And what that showed us is that people really wanted to stay home. And at the same time, he asked me to learn everything about technology. And so it afforded me the opportunity to travel around the world and speak on in-home passive technology to keep people in their homes safer and longer. So I got to go to Israel a couple of times and Ireland and just be a part of amazing groups of doctors and therapists as we would build out new products. I also was I actually broke ground and designed and built a day center focused around dementia care. So I'm a dementia care specialist. And then I got recruited to another firm that we did a medication dispenser. So I have a very diverse background in the medical field as well. And then I met this lovely one 10 years ago this week. And as
I do have to say a side note. So just yesterday we celebrated our 10 years of meeting and 5 years of being married. So August 1st, we met and then we married 5 years later. So that was yesterday's celebration.
Congratulations.
Oh, wait,
2 days ago.
2 days.
Sorry about that. 2 days ago.
But so, yeah, and so we'll get into the story more once you start asking questions. But that's kind of my diverse background, from anything from the restaurant to the therapy to building businesses.
Oh, that is amazing, and congratulations. I look
Thank
forward
you.
to one day celebrating 5, 10, and or 20 years. So I want to get into the real question of, you have a product called the Wonder. What inspired you to create it? Let's talk about that process and learn a little more about your actual product.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll take that question. So back in 1998, 25 years ago, my parents were sitting on the boardwalk in Bethany Beach, Delaware, and saw a single mom coming off of the beach with her 3 kids, and she was miserable. We've all, if you go to the beach at all, you know that carrying the stuff to and from can be the most miserable part of the day. Or if it's windy and sand's blowing on you, that's also very miserable. But they watched this woman and it was terrible. And they just thought to themselves, going to the beach should never be a difficult experience. And so the typical American dream, they went up and napkin sketched out this lounger that if you flipped it up, it became like a dolly. And so it was a 2-in-1 transformer. My dad got it patented. And tried to take it to market and just couldn't figure out how. So
they also had 6 kids that they needed to support. So
yeah,
and this is way before Google.
Yeah, that's right. And so fast forward, I was at a point in my life where I needed a change. That's when I was working for the big consulting firm, and called up my dad and said, hey, Dad, what would you think about me trying to take your product to market? Now, I always say I was just smart enough to think I could do it, and honestly, just dumb enough to think I might be able to do something like this, because it's hard. But my dad, who's one of my heroes, started crying and said, honey, that would be a dream come true. And so he assigned the patent over to me, gave me his drawings, which, now are pretty Frankenstein looking. It's all plastic and this big kludgy thing. But I took that as the foundation and worked with a manufacturer, sold them 60% of my company. It was a greenhouse of learning, but our values did not align. So we went to market, and then I just said, I cannot continue doing this with these guys as my partner. And so I walked away. And then I went and worked at the shrimp docks in Charleston, South Carolina for $10 for minimum wage. But I had to. I mean, maybe if anybody can relate to this, when you go through something that feels really soul crushing, me walking away from my dream and my parents' dream, I needed something just to heal my soul. And so I needed to be around salt of the earth kind of people. And so I did that for 9 months. And then Stace got tired of me coming home smelling like shrimp. And
there's only so many ways. I know what he says, Forrest Gump. There are only so many ways you can make shrimp too. So.
Yeah. And so then
Let's step back though real quick, because
Yeah.
you're also saying you walked away. Who held the patent at that point?
So they did. So part of the deal was the patent went with the sale. And so I assigned the patent over to them. And then I pushed them, honestly, to get another patent, and a newer product that we had designed. And so they owned both of those. And so, yeah. But the good news is we took both of those patents when Stace and I eventually started OME Gear, and made sure we weren't infringing on those patents, and created the brand new product that we have today. So that's how we utilized those patents.
So now you have a new patent specifically just for this product that you developed from those first products.
Yeah, we have 4.
We actually have 4 patents. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
You've openly talked about the process of taking your product commercial, and you talk about transitioning. How difficult was it for both of you when you decided, this is the full-time thing, this is what I want to do, I'm just going to commit all in? Can you talk about that process and what you went through and how that worked?
Yeah, so I'll pick it up here. So Jules, all that happened like in 2014. She worked for the shrimp dock, and I was working for the startup company in Charleston, the medication dispenser, and we just felt like we had more to offer, and I knew she had more to offer than delving that out shrimp for $10 an hour. Her time was worth way more than that, and so we at that time we we have a consulting coaching firm called A Salty Rim. We like margaritas, but we also know that salt heals, and salt is typically the missing ingredient in any recipe. Even a dessert, you need a little salt. So we still have it, our coaching consulting firm. So we did that for a little while, but in 2016ish, something wasn't right. Something we were missing, or something was missing in our life. And we would go to the beach and we would just see the piles of junk at the end of the boardwalks. And we were like, man, we really need to take this transformer product to market, because there was nothing out there like it. And we lived at the beach, so we knew that. And so that's when we just hit the drawing board again. And it's like, what can we do? How can we make it different? And so we were talking, and I got a little envious of Jules being able to stay home every day and work on this project. And then I had to go into the office, even though it was only 12 minutes away, but I was still at the office. And then so I'd get into the office at 7 a.m. I'd be off around 3:30. We'd go do our consulting until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then we'd work on OME gear. We didn't even have a name for the company at that point, and I was just like, all right, how many consulting clients do we need for me to quit my job? Well, we got a new one. We hit that number, and I walked in the next day and I told my boss I resigned. And he was like, what? And I was like, yep. And so she didn't even know I was doing it. I said, because I knew that number, when I hit that number, that's when I was going to do it. So I called her, I said, I just resigned. And she's like, what? And I was like, if we don't jump off the boat, we never will. And so this is our time. We're going to do it. And we found some business partners that came in and came in as 20% of our company. And because they believed in us and they believed in our story. And so we were all in. There was no turning back at that point. Where we were not all in. Well, we thought we were all in at that point. We were not all in. But time-wise, we just had to keep pushing forward. We didn't go all in until 2021, which is continuing on the story of the entrepreneurial journey. But so that's when we just said, all right, let's do it in 2016.
And I have some past knowledge, but I kind of want you to elaborate what it was like for you as two women who were a couple going into business together, because you faced some hardships and you talk about that openly in your podcast, and you talk about that experience for people who are starting this process, what it really means to commit. So if you don't mind sharing that story with our audience today, I think they'd get so much out of that.
Yeah. So we could so relate to what Brian was saying with that woman who asked if she should hire an older white male. A quick story. We were at a trade show, and it was myself and Stace and my brother, who was a part of our team, and he'd done all of our branding and everything. And this older gentleman walked up and said, wow, this is a really cool, innovative product. And we just said, thanks, we appreciate that. And he looks at my brother and he said, how did you come up with this? And we just kind of looked at each other, and my brother, who is incredible, looked at the guy and he goes, oh no, it's not me. That is not my idea. It's these two ladies. They've come up with this and they've worked on it, and it's their company. And the guy said, no, really, how did you come up with it? And we just stood there and we were like, Clay said again, he's like, it's not me. And the guy's like, okay. And he walked off. He didn't want to believe. And the same thing happened on the beach with another brother of mine. Somebody said, how'd you come up with this? And my brother was like, it was not me. And same thing. They didn't want to hear that it was designed by women. So the three challenges for us in what we're doing that we have found are, we are in a man's world in manufacturing, in the outdoor gear space, and in trying to raise funding. So those three things make it be an uphill climb for us, but we are thriving. I'm proud to say we are thriving despite those challenges.
That is incredible. And if you don't mind talking about some of the sacrifices you've made to go to market, I think that is important for people to hear, because your story rings so much truth to the experience so many people go through. And you have shared some of that information in your podcast and in your videos. So if you don't mind sharing just briefly some of that.
Yeah. Going back to the challenges of the manufacturing and the funding, funding has, obviously you need money to manufacture. So I would say funding is probably the number one. And statistics are that only 1.7% of all funding goes to women. And then 1% of their 1% of that goes to women in tech. And so it's, or is it, I can't remember the statistics. What is it?
2.7% of all funding goes to women. 1.7 of that is women in tech, which leaves 1% of all funding to go to women in the product space like us. Those are bad odds.
Yeah. And so we've done a lot of pitches, and we've won many awards, but it's just been really hard for us to get funded. So during COVID, we were not able to find any money. We weren't able to get help from the government. There was nothing for us, because we were a startup company, and obviously during COVID, everything crashed. We lost a manufacturer. They went silent on us. We had to find a new manufacturer. You couldn't travel to your manufacturer. We had to create this product all via Zoom and calls with our manufacturer. And he was in China. He does speak English, and his family lives in Columbia, South Carolina. So he does have a connection in the South Carolina area. But but we tried to make it work. We tried to do pitches. And then December of 2020, Jules looked at me and she said, "How much do you believe in this?" And I said, "With all my heart." And at that point, we had maxed out all of our credit cards. And we have a lot of credit cards. We closed out all of our 401ks and maxed out our savings accounts. And all we had left was the equity. And our manufacturer, because we couldn't find money and we ran out of money, hid our product in a warehouse in Utah, and we couldn't get to it. And so she said, "We need to sell our house." And so we knew that we had enough equity in the house, just enough equity in the house to get our product out of that warehouse. So we sold our house in 4 days. And we were like, well, what are we going to do now? Because we didn't have a place to live. And so at that point, we weren't homeless because we had family, but we were definitely houseless. And so we actually financed an RV, and that's actually cheaper than rent, and especially in Charleston. And we wrapped it in our branding, and we hit the road at 250. Well, I was 49 and she was 50 at that point. And we hit the road for 2.5 years. And we have been on the road, literally building our company one cell at a time. But so all that to say is the biggest challenges in our business has been funding. But we have put everything we have into the business.
I think if I can just interject what people don't understand. So a complex product like ours, we've spent $350,000 just on the design of it. Right. And so when you start talking about those kinds of numbers, I mean, we've raised a total of $2 million, which when we sit back and what we've accomplished on $2 million is nothing short of impressive. And I don't say that arrogantly. I just say, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have got to be gritty. You've got to be scrappy. You've got to be able to take $1 and turn it into 100. And so you have to be able to, you have to say, what am I willing to give up in order to see this come to fruition? Because more than likely, you're going to have to give those things up. And so you almost have to be ready to say yes, when the opportunity comes, because you don't get a lot of time to think about it. And then you don't get time to grieve. We didn't get time to grieve selling the house that we loved in the neighborhood that we loved. We just had to do it to keep our company moving forward. Now, we believe it's going to pay off in a big way, but we're going to write a book and we're going to call it One Hell of a Ride. And that will, for multiple reasons, you can see why that would make sense.
Absolutely. And I will definitely get the book and see the movie. So with that, can you talk about what the value is for you to own your patent in this journey? How valuable is that for you?
Oh, I think that is one of the number one questions we get when someone sees it. First of all, they're like, are you engineers? And that's the number one question. And then the next question, do you have patents? And we're like, yeah, not only do we have one, we have 4. And I think that validates us in the market that we've done the hard work, because getting a patent is not cheap. And, it takes a lot of work. So we wanted to validate our product, and we'll continue as we make changes to it, getting more patents on it, so we can protect our product.
Yeah, a patent has been so important to us. I mean, truly, a lot of people will say your patent is only as good as the money that you have to defend it, right? Now, as a company, do we have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend somebody infringing on our patent at this point? No. However, it's a little bit like insurance, right? You hope you never need it, but when you need it, you're really glad you have it. Mm-hmm. And so what a patent is for us, it definitely validates us, but it also is a hurdle for people to get to us, right? If they see that we have 4 patents on this thing, then it might cause them pause before they just do a knockoff version of it. And so we're incredibly proud of the 4 patents that we have.
And we have a roadmap of products coming out that we'll have multiple patents on those as well.
So Sean, we'll be really good friends.
Yes.
I love it, because I get emotional when I hear your story, because it's really the truth of what happens to a small business. And I don't know if you can share any information about what lays ahead for you, any upbeat or positive news that may be coming your way that you want to share?
Yes. So we just did a tandem TED Talk, which is kind of unheard of. They don't do those very often. So we were invited to do that. So we just did that, and we were thrilled about that. We've been on a live TV show and we won, which is really cool. But I think what I'm most excited about is I love this product, but our next product is going to be an outdoor wheelchair. And we want to make the outdoors accessible to everyone. Yeah. We've blown up on TikTok, and one of the biggest questions is, can I use the current Wanderer for my mom or my son who can't walk, or my whatever, And our answer right now has to be, because we've not tested it, has to be no. And that breaks our heart every time we have to say that. So we literally cannot wait to get the next product out to market, where people who before couldn't have had access to the outside, this will give them an open door to have access to the outside. So we're really excited about that.
Well, I think that's super exciting. And I am absolutely distraught, because we have 1 minute left. And this again has gone by so quickly. But what are your parting words for anybody who wants to follow the path that you have gone on? What advice would you like to share that you wish you knew before this all started?
Put your seatbelt on. It's a hard journey, but if you believe in it, it's worth it.
Yeah. It costs more, it takes longer, and it's harder than you ever can dream when you have your idea, right? However, if you don't give up, for us, this is a calling. This isn't just a company or a product. We don't care about that. And we do, obviously, but the bigger mission for us, this is a calling. And so when you've been called to something, figure out, like I said, what you're willing to give up. And then, like Stace said, put your seatbelt on because it's a ride. And then
Call us.
reach out to us.
Yeah.
We're an open book. We would love to help anybody fill in some rocks for your potholes.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. You really just amaze me every time I talk to you, and it's like talking to an old friend every time. So thank you.